am and I need to get another. Verses, but you, O Lord, make us worthy to pray. Thank you, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Give us today our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses. Shli levlogeson. Let us give thanks to the of merciful God, the Father of our Lord God and Savior Jesus Christ, for He has covered us, helped us, guarded us, accepted us to Himself, spared us, supported us, and brought us to this hour. Let us also ask the Lord God unto God for to guard us in all peace, this holy day and all the days of our life.
Lord God, the Pantocrator, the Father of our Lord God and Savior Jesus Christ, we thank you for everything concerning everything and everything you have covered us, helped us, guarded us, accepted us to yourself, spared us, supported us, and have brought us to this hour. And we entreat your goodness, the lover of mankind. Grant us to complete this holy day and all the days of our life in all peace with your fear. All envy, all temptation, all the work of Satan, the counsel of command and the rising of enemies, hidden and manifest, take them away from us and from all your people, from this church, your holy place. But as for those things which are good and profitable, do provide for us. It is you have given us the authority to tread on serpents, scorpions, and all the power of the enemy, and lead us not into temptation, but with grace, compassion, and kind. Make us, Lord, worthy to pray thankfully. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. Our trespasses as we lead us not, deliver us not. Christ Jesus.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to day 2 of Defending the Faith. Today we'll take Abuna Greg's blessing in the form of a talk on why Christianity. And then Abuna requested that the talk is dynamic. So we'll have microphones circulating throughout the crowd. And when you guys have a response, go ahead, raise your hand, find the nearest mic next to you, and we'll try to facilitate it that way. Cool.
Maybe dynamic would mean that I move around, so I'm not sure how dynamic it will be. You can raise your hand if you want to elaborate on a certain point. I think you know. Or we wait till the end. So let's get into it right away. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, Thomas, glory forever. I mean, we ask, Lord, that He send us tonight what every person needs more than what I have prepared, so that we can all benefit by the gift of the Holy Spirit who dwells in all of us. A probabilistic approach. So, if we discuss why Christianity from the Bible or from anything related to the church, we are not fair to the ones who are outside because they don't believe in the Bible, they don't believe in the church. So we have to discuss why Christianity for what is people outside can be in touch with. Maybe they don't know the information, but we will provide this information as we talk today, but it will not be biblical. And because of this is the right way to do a talk related to college, related to defending the faith. It cannot be biblical, because if it is, then I'm giving a sermon. We're not here to listen to a sermon, we're here to listen to an argument. There's a big difference between the two. And we'll see it today by God's grace. So probability is basically, is Christianity man-made or not? Should we succeed or fail? Are we believing in something that was created by the disciples and then we just follow them? Or it has more credibility, again from outside the Bible? The big picture for this, it's a part of a bigger body of work that we do in seminary school, by God's grace, getting the blessing of having the honor of teaching this under apologetics, intellectual approaches to the apologetics, because we can get into this to explain it to people. So it is 4 levels. The first one is about the existence of God. And it was, you grow up with the term that you cannot prove God's existence. In fact, you can. But it's not the topic for tonight. You can actually prove God's existence in a very, very nice, actually logical trick or logical approach, but it's not for tonight. So you see, we discuss science, history, philosophy, and logic to see if there is an initiator behind the world. So we're not talking about God of the Christianity. We're talking about, is this thing called the world, the cosmos, and the life in the cosmos started on its own, or there is an initiator? It's not the topic of tonight. It would have been fitting yesterday, but we got the blessing of an amazing talk by Abuna Daniel. May God bless his service. You see, the logic is the bridge. If there is an initiator in the world, if we assume I can prove to you that life cannot start on its own, and I can show you that the Big Bang cannot happen on its own, then there is an initiator, because these are the 2 legs that remove God. Evolution, which we believe in within certain boundaries, and the Big Bang also, which we believe in, but we have to understand, can it happen on its own or not? The logic that builds us, gives us the bridge to the next thing, is that we claim we have a movement. I'm not going to call it Christianity at all. In order to be fair, academically, we have to call it a movement. We'll describe what that movement is and see if it's man-made or it's not man-made, based on logic, not based on the Bible. So if there is an initiator of life and the cosmos, take it for me now, because this is actually 3 hours of each to talk about evolution and talk about cosmology, and again to give an argument, not a biblical argument, of course. Today is about logic. If there is an initiator, in which movement he's captured. So we discuss different beliefs. Then if it is the Christian movement, then we discuss which Christianity, the apostolic Christianity or other type of Christianity. And then if it is the apostolic Christianity, you get what you practice at church, depth into Christianity. So the big picture of the intellectual steps to get to what we do in the church is there an initiator to life and cosmos? If there is, in which religion is he captured best? If it is Christianity, all of these, by the way, with proofs. If it is Christianity, which Christianity? The Christianity that says true body and blood, or symbolic one of them, or other types? If it is the apostolic one, which is, again, work that is very, very amazing to discuss, then we get into what we do at the church. So what we work on usually is the level 4, but there are 3 very, very dense and pleasurable levels under it that, in fact, help us to get into digging into the faith. Today is about logic. It's about logic and this movement that started by people saying something about somebody, and we'll see whether this is something we should. How do we judge it? So I'm going to talk about 3 things. The first one It's called Christianity Killers. Today I want to prove to you that this faith we believe in should not have succeeded. Again, the faith we believe in should not have succeeded. It should have died. I'm going to list this 8 reasons or 8 odds that this movement that started 2,000 years ago should not have survived. And I will show it must have failed. And I want you to give me a scenario if you want to debate about this. So the first one, Christianity Killers. Second, historical mention about this movement, not biblical, historical from non-Christian sources. Third, there is 11 other religions that started in parallel with it and died on their own. So why did this one continue? And why did the other die? 2 and 3 will be very quick because 1 by itself will take quite a bit of time because I want to give it its due attention. So these are the 3 axes that we work with in logic. The movement we're in should have died at its inception, like very, very early on it should have been killed. Second, is there any mention about it outside the Bible, outside the book that these people believe in? Third, is there any other movement that started and died? Because that makes us compare. Unfortunately, the time will not permit the 2 and 3. This lecture in the apologetics class, it takes about 3 hours to cover the 3. So the first one might get close to an hour, but I hope to keep you entertained. The movement. I'm not going to use the term Christianity. Let's list its success or failure and give an evaluation to this. First, we shall logically estimate whether it should succeed or fail. And moreover, I'm actually going to show you that it has to fail. It has to fail. And then we'll ask ourselves, what made it succeed? By showing that it has to fail, it makes us think, why did it succeed? Is it man-made? Is there some bribery? Is there some deceit? Is there something hidden? So the things that would make it, would oppose it, we call it odds. I'm going to use this term quite a bit. So the failure because of the odds that face it, or success against all odds. So we can use the word success and failure interchangeably. The discussion will not use the Bible or any other Christian sources. It's purely logical, or we can use non-Christian sources, especially the one that insult this movement, not support it. We will not start with the premise of the resurrection. It was said yesterday, Abuna will talk to you about Christ today. I will not talk to you about Christ today. Although we'll talk about Christianity, I will not talk about Christ. Because I'm going to give an academic case. If I talk about Christ and I'm talking about the Bible, then I'm talking about Christianity. And this is not a talk in a college camp, especially an apologetics talk. It has to be a talk about logic in order to weigh what we're in is man-made or you'll see that you'll judge by yourself. We shall stick to logic only. Also, I will ignore, because there is people that Christianity grew up parallel to, called the Jews. They have a book. They have a book actually that is full of prophecies that would point very, very well to event of the people of this movement, take them as their chief. This chief is called Jesus Christ. They are so deluded that they take somebody who was crucified as their chief. It's just completely illogical. However, there are prophecies from a parallel faith next to them called Judaism that talks about this person and has a lot of prophecies that fit him, his birthplace, his way of death, the piercing of his body, and so on. So I'm going to ignore this. I'm going to ignore the Old Testament. I'm just going to make it pure logic. So, failure because of the odds that will face it, or does it succeed against all odds, and how? Second, we will not use the Bible. Third, we will not use the resurrection. And we will not use any other pointing to it from any religion that would support my argument. So I'm going to make it completely bare bones for you. It won't be math tonight, I promise you. Just bear with me for 3 or 4 slides, and I will make it very, very simple. An event X. The event X is the success of Christianity. What is the probability of this? Any probability is between 0, which means it didn't succeed, or 1, it must succeed. The probability of its success is 1 minus the probability of its failure. So for the logical argument, we'll talk about the failure more, because I'm going to say this odd must make it fail, this odd must make it fail. I'm going to actually have 8 odds that each one of them should kill it. And the 8 of them are working all the time, not successively, in parallel, at the same time. More math. I just want to explain this vertical bar between events A and B. So A vertical B means the probability of A happening provided that B happened. It's called conditional probability or Bayesian probability. The one who invented it is actually a priest called Bayes, B-A-Y-E-S, and he was actually relating to the existence of God, and he came up with this. Your cell phone works with this, any communication system works with this, anything that relates to events deals with this. If you take statistics, I was talking to one of the young ladies tonight, and this is appearing very much when events depend on one another. So I'm going to use this vertical bar just for notation. We shall qualitatively demonstrate the likelihood, that's a probability term, احتمال, of the success or failure, we can use the terms interchangeably, of this movement, I'm not going to use the term Christianity, under these factors and logically rationalized, non-numerically. I'm not going to come up with a number. We can, if people want to do this, I would love to work with them. The probability of this movement emerging off the ground at its inception. So let's talk about something. The religion, we're not talking about the Crusades. We're talking about the very beginning, year 30, 40, 50. Can it get off the ground? Can it succeed? Can it work? The inception and initial growth of any movement is the key factor to study its authenticity. Also, we're going to study the environment, because if you have a movement here like the Mormonism or Jehovah's Witness, now we have freedom of religion. Anybody can come up with anything. Nobody will persecute you. This is completely different than the environment where this movement has started. We will show this. So the beginning is the key. It's like the startup. Any startup company is big deal to make this investment pitch very quick, how it's differentiated and so on. So the startup of this movement, does it have a chance to succeed or not? So the probability of an event, the success of Christianity in the presence of challenges or odds against that success as a Bayesian probability. Just for notation, I'm not going to get into math. This is said after Reverend Beige, so I'll skip this. This is the notation: probability that event A happen provided that event B happen. Or probability of A is the success of Christianity provided that there's an odd against it. We're going to mention the odds very shortly. The notation will be P of success of the movement provided that, or such that this event or this odd exists. And it's read as follows: probability of the success of the movement given the occurrence of odd sub I. We're going to have odd sub 1, odd sub 2, odd sub 3, odd sub 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is just a notation. Leave the right-hand side of the equation. But that's the formulation of Bayes theory. So the presence of probability against all odds is actually the product of all of these. Probability of it succeeding while odd 1 exists, times probability of it succeeding, probability that odd 2 exists. Probability of succeeding provided that odd 3 exists. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can come up with a very, very, very low probability, as I will show you qualitatively, not with numbers, but I will take each one of them and show it to you. So the probability of success provided all odds happening is what we're after. Can this movement, and we'll see what it talks about, succeed provided that there is 8 challenges operating all the time on it, all the time. in order to do this graphically rather than mathematically, related to Bayes' theory is something called causal diagrams. And then I will not get, it's not math, but it's used heavily in medicine, it's used heavily in statistics, used heavily in AI. There's actually a book by Judea Pearl, who is a UCLA professor. It's called The Book of Why. And it's about causality. What causes what? And how do you study? And there's actually the more difficult version of it is about a language he invented to do AI using the causality. It's very, very amazing. So I'm going to use just the notation. We're not going to get in anything mathematical. So if there is a drug that affects life expectancy, you have this arrow. The cause is the drug, the effect is the life expectancy of the person. Just the arrow notation. So what does the drug do to the person's life expectancy? That's what the arrow donates. And we call it causal diagram because the drug causes something on life expectancy. The drug is the cause and the effect is the life expectancy. This is how it's read. This shows the relationship of how the drug D is affected person's lifespan L. I will use this notation to say how the odd number 1 affects the success or failure of this movement. But maybe there's other things other than the drug D itself. If you do any drug testing, as we said with the notation, the effect of drug D on life expectancy L. But there's other factors like age, demographics, diet can affect it. So we increment this diagram by something like this. That's basically what causal diagram is that it's not only the drug would affect the person, but also the diet of the person would affect the not only the drug will affect the life expectancy, but also the diet of the person, the demographic of the person, the age of the person. This is called causality. The tail end of the arrow is the cause, and the head of the arrow is the effect. I will just introduce the notation because I will use this today in our discussion. It's used in so many fields. This is actually one of the fields to see if you're going to invest on something or finding a problem in a manufacturing line. It's very, very heavily used. In law also. Okay, so let's apply it to what we have tonight. So what we have covered is basically probability. What we're studying is the probability of failure or the probability of success. They are related. I will use now the term failure more because I will say the probability of failure by the odd number 1. The probability of failure if odd number 2 exists. Probability of failure if odd number 3 exists. And the failure happens because all of these odds are multiplied by one another. That's basically what we have introduced. So I will use this notation to build the case that the Christianity must fail. It has to fail. And here is the effect that we're going to have. Christianity, probability of its failure. What could cause the failure? Number 1, we're getting now into the meat of the discussion. The first odd that affects the failure of Christianity or effect of that movement is what the movement is calling for. What is that movement saying? There is a man, again, I'm not talking about the Bible, so I'm going to use the data that people have. There's a man called Jesus. This is proven from non-Christian sources. Because I don't have the time to cover the non-Christian sources, I have only one to show you what I'm talking about, but I will read it later. So we have a man called Jesus Christ. He exists in history. He's not a fairy tale. Some people who follow him left him when he was crucified. And later on, they said, this man on the cross, their claim, he rose from the dead and he's God. That is the message of what this movement is saying. The man called Jesus, and that's non-Christian sources talk about him. There's a person who was called Jesus who was crucified because there was sedition in the Jews and they crucified him and so on. So eventually he got crucified. I'm not talking about Bible events. I'm talking about what the society would say. Then some followers said that he is risen and they saw him. And then they started preaching him that he is risen from the dead. The problem is if you go to one of them 2 months later after the event, and you tell them, show me that person. He's risen, right? You claim that he's risen. What will that person answer? He will say, sorry, you just missed him. He ascended. That's the story we believe in. Would you follow this group? Would you follow this group? You just missed him. كان لسه هنا. لو كنت جيت بس الأسبوع اللي فات كنت هتشوف. صح? This is the movement. That's the biggest odd against the movement. It should kill it, like give it 3 more years and it should die. Are you guys understanding what I'm building here? I'm building a case for the failure. And then I want to rely on you to give me a scenario for success because it succeeded. Obviously. There's the Aimma to prove it. So first odd, the message itself should kill it. And by the way, nobody can join this group unless he believes in this message. It's not like kumbaya kida, let's love one another and so on. No, that's what actually philosophies do, like Hinduism and Buddhism. I don't have the time to compare, but this group has a dogma. Like they have no chance to collect people. Like you can't join them if you don't believe in the resurrection. In what they claim that this person on the cross resurrected. So the chance of retaining people is just abysmal. It won't happen. So again, the lunacy of the message and the stubbornness that no one can join them unless he believes that he resurrected. Give it few years and this movement should completely end. Second thing, they didn't use any corruptible way to do it, and I will prove from non-Christian sources. Just bear with me. Take it for trust now. They never used war. They never used bribery. They never used accessing the Roman Senate. They never used kissing up to the Jews to make it grow a little bit. None. You just preach it, and whatever happens to them happens. So that's odd number 2. There is no power behind it. There's no power behind it for it to grow. The people who believed in it is very small. The followers of this man is 12 plus 70. That's what their documents say. There's a document that they have by somebody called Mark wrote it, and Matthew and Luke and John, who cares? They wrote in this document that is 12 and 70. So the number of followers of him, it's not like in the hundreds. It's very, very small number. Fierce opposers, I will give it, each one of these will get into detail, but odd number 4, you're not just preaching in the United States and you have freedom of religion and you can sue anybody, you can do anything to you. No. The environment is very hostile. And there are 3 opposers to this movement that are very, very, very fierce, and they will not stop till they kill it. I'm going to mention them as we get into each one. Odd number 5, these people who led the movement, very early on, they were all executed. So when the leaders by that number just disappear right away, you should expect that the followers would be afraid and not continue. So odd number 5, all of the leaders that started it died very, very, very early. Odd number 6, this is one of the strongest ones. There is the whole empire called the Roman Empire. This is not a weak empire. Spent 300 years. 300 years killing them. And they didn't disappear. I'm not asking for why. I'm giving you facts of history. 300 years of the Roman Empire, killing them, and they haven't disappeared. Actually, they emerged from this. 7, all of a sudden they are found in countries that these Jewish and maybe some Gentile starters of the movement, they know only 2 languages. It's either Hebrew or Greek. How could they speak Egyptian? Well, let's say Egypt was predominantly Greek. How could they speak Indian? How could they speak in the area of Russia, for example? In the 1st century, how long does it take us to learn a new language? With all of the technology we have, let alone convincing somebody that our God is on the cross, He's risen. When people asked to see Him, we told them He just ascended, and using a completely new language to convince somebody with this fairy tale. Also, they were saying that he's going to come soon, and he didn't come. So let's say the story. A fairy tale spread by peace. All of the people spreading it were killed. It has 3 continuous opposers. And a small number of the Christians. The leaders got killed. And the 3 opposers. And the Roman Empire annihilating it. And then it's found to be in different languages. And the people who entered just said, let me try it. And he said, he's coming soon. Then maybe I'll see him, and maybe not. Maybe I missed the resurrection. They say that he's coming soon, so I see him in his second coming. Sorry, it hasn't happened. How long would this maintain itself? So let's get into it. I'm listing them here, so I want you to absorb them. These are the 8 odds that we're trying to find the probability of success provided odd 1, provided odd 2, provided odd 3, or the probability of failure because of odd 1, odd 2, odd 3, odd 4, odd 5, odd 6, odd 7, odd 8. All of them simultaneously. They're not successive, they are in parallel. Fairy tale message, spread by speech, group is extremely small in number. 3 sets of opposers, Jews, Greeks, and Romans. I'll talk about them. All of the people who started are dead. The Roman Empire is killing women and children and men by the thousands, and they don't disappear. The language barrier, and the scoffers who tried it, and they found that it doesn't work, and they went out. These are 8 powers. As soon as the movement started, these are in action. So again, the causal diagrams. The arrow is the effect we're trying to prove is that it must fail. And the story doesn't make any sense. So let's see why it doesn't make any sense. First, if he's risen, sorry if the font is small, if he's risen will affects that it doesn't make sense. Where is he? Dead people do not rise. Sorry, that just doesn't hold any water. Philosophy, gods don't die. Again, these are causal diagrams. All of these arrows are feeding into the message doesn't make sense, which feeds into it must fail. If he's risen, where is he? Dead people do not die. Do not rise. Gods do not die. You call him God. How can God die? By definition, God doesn't die. Crucifixion is not a dignified death. Are you not ashamed? You have no chance to collect people into this. And Jesus resurrected, and when they claim he resurrected, and then when people say, show him to me, sorry, you just missed him. When does he come back? He said soon. احنا مستنيين السون دي. So I hope I can finish the presentation before he comes again. It's called superstition. Tacitus is a famous Roman historian. And then we read Lucianus. Lucianus is a Greek satirist who calls these people misguided creatures. Yeah, I would call them misguided creatures. Look at what they believe in. So this is non-Christian sources that gives us a lens inside the movement. I'm not going to use the Bible, I said. It would be a sermon. We're giving here an argument. So by the causal diagram, all of these effects are feeding into the message is very fairy tale, which feeds into probability of failure, provided this odd is very, very, very high, almost 1. It would be interesting to put the numbers on this. From the Bible, we can analyze the disciples or his followers. They have awareness because of meeting him on a fishing trip. They got interested. They left everything and followed him. They made the decision that you are the Christ, the Son of God. And they made an action that after they all abandoned him at the cross, they all preached him valiantly. That's the Bible, so we'll not use this. What we can use is what people see from outside. Awareness, the disciples are Jews. This is a Jewish leader. It's very common for a Jewish group to follow for a Jewish leader. That's the awareness. Interest, it is not the first time that the Jews follow a Jewish leader. Decision, none of them supported him at his death. There's nobody at the cross. He died as a slave and he died. There's no crowd from his followers. That's a failure. All of a sudden, this group started a movement claiming, preaching that he rose from the dead and that he is God. That's what the society sees. That's what we're talking about tonight. Number two, the message is spread by speech only. There is no war, there's no bribery, there is no hidden agenda. I will prove it again from the text. How are you going to collect people? It's just peace. And with this message, it's very hard to collect people. No use of force of any method. No bribery. How do I know no bribery? I'm going to read for you text from from Lucianus. Among many texts that if these guys were behaving like in a very funny way, it would have been listed over and over and over by the historians, the non-Christian historians. They want to catch them of how foolish they are. Or deceit. You want to join us? He's risen. We saw him. You have to believe this. That's their claim. I'm not gonna lie to you like, join us. Maybe if you just believe that he's a good man, he's a prophet, we can accept you. No. They're very picky. Very illogical. Fish chance to collect people. The other thing is that they didn't make any profit out of this. Like if you look at and I'm going to prove this from non-Christian sources, the behavior of the leaders, the behavior of the followers of this movement. I cannot use it from the Bible, otherwise it's a sermon. But it is seen from what is said about them. They didn't collect money, they didn't become rich. Actually, if you take their money, they will not come after you. There's such mention of making fun of them, of how if you take them, they will never come and sue you or ask for their money back. That's how they are. Really, really crazy. So that's from the non-Christian sources. There are three ways to spread a message, either secretly with deceit and bribery and try to find a way to make it grow, or by power and compulsion. Like if you don't believe in our faith, we're going to kill you. We are the right faith of God. If you don't join us, we cut your tongue or we cut your neck or we put a levy of heavy taxes on you. And we're very big about land. We have to do invasions to collect land. That's a way to start a religion. But that doesn't happen in this movement. And if it did, we'll find the non-Christian. So the Roman Empire would squash them in no time based on civil or being criminal. Or the third message, just come openly and you just suffer whatever happens to you. There's no political correctness. Religious opponents are the Jews. They have a God, so this is a religious opponent. Intellectually, you want to talk about gods, and then a Starbucks of gods with the Greeks. So you're going to talk about God, and you say he died, the first sentence. Power or politics, you have the Roman Empire. So the three fierce opponents, religious opponent, the Jews, intellectual opponents, the Greeks, political, military are the Romans. And the punishment is either death, thrown to the lions, cut to pieces, torture till the people watching you will learn, never entertain this movement. It's not something easy to say, yeah, it's just we can believe in it. No. If you've seen what happens to the believers, I don't think any of us, I'm saying this related to the talk, would entertain joining them. There are religions that were started at that time and they died. I'm not going to read exactly, but here is the reference for it. Theudas and Judas, both of them started a movement. People joined them and it died very soon after this. So there's examples of religious leaders that their movement died. Here is what Josephus says about them. And it's mentioned in the book of Acts also because Gamaliel says, if these guys are doing something funny, it will die. If it is from God, this is a Jewish rabbi, then we might be resisting God. I'll leave it at that. Also, they were made fun in Athens when this one of them was called Paul. He was with the Jews and then joined this misguided group. So he's trying to convince the people in Athens with the resurrection. And he failed. He failed miserably. And they kicked him out. Like this gesture of this man, just like, what does this joker wants to say? As soon as he mentioned the resurrection. This is another effect of the group is very small. It should die quickly. But it has an amazing behavior. So here is the point that feeds into the failure. This point feeds into the failure. But there is things feeding into this point. Lucianos say they are misguided creatures. They will not increase. But they never preach any crime. For example, they forced the people to pay the taxes to the Roman Empire. That kills them. Pay the taxes to the Roman Empire, although the Roman Empire is killing them. They did not ask the slaves to revolt against their masters, although they have collected so many people quickly. If they said the slaves should revolt against their masters, they didn't. They don't want any political move to collect numbers. It's written in their books to obey the law and to respect the ruler. Who's the ruler? It was Nero at that time when these books were written. Their books. I don't call them holy books, it's their books. And they never asked a believing wife if she believes and the husband doesn't and he's willing to live with her to divorce him. No, stay with him. It's still holy. But if he says you have to leave the faith, no, they say God is higher than any man, so you can let the person depart. But it didn't go and say, if your husband doesn't believe with you or the wife doesn't believe with you, then divorce him. No, it didn't say this. This is applied at the initial coming into the movement. So, third odd, the group is very small. And the Romans, at some point, by the way, the starting number of the group is 120. I'm just using Acts 2 for that number. The Romans, in a couple of weeks, they crucified 6,000 people. How come they couldn't contain this? 6,000 to 120? So it's a very small number. You can contain them very quickly. Story's over. So that's a third odd. And we said Thudas started a movement and it died. Number of people is never increasing the threshold you can build the movement on. So all of these are by the causal diagram feed into basically the number of people is very small. It should die very quickly. That's odd number 3. Let's read Lucian. That's very, very helpful to read how to look at the Christian from outside without having the Bible, without having their book, by this satirist, 2nd century. Let's get into his text right away. The Christians, worship a man to this day, the distinguished personage who introduced their novel rites. They have certain practices, and was crucified on that account. They introduced novel rites in a very big hub of Jewish existence, and they said, no, we're not going to tolerate this, bye-bye. That's Lucian calling them names that shows he has disdain to them. You see, these misguided creatures start with the general conviction that they are immortal of all time. أنا مش هموت أبدا. Wow. Very crazy. Misguided creatures. Which explains the contempt of death. This is about something very amazing. What makes them not afraid of death? He's seeing it. These guys are crazy. They're not afraid of death. How come? So he calls them misguided creatures. He's not impressed. But we see from this the behavior of this group, which explains the contempt of death and voluntary self-devotion, which are so common among them. That's their lifestyle. I am not reading from the Bible. I'm reading from somebody making fun of this stupid behavior that people who have no interest in life, when faced with death, and they think they're not going to die ever, so death for them doesn't make any bearing. He continues. And then it was impressed on them by their original lawgiver that they are all brothers from the moment that they are converted and deny the gods of Greece, musibadi, this is problem, and worship the crucified sage yani wise. So very clear here. Misguided creatures, they don't care about death. They leave our gods that make us victorious in our wars, and they follow a crucified, yani haga very lunatic, and live after his laws. All this they take quite on faith, with the result that they despise all worldly goods or goods alike, regarding them merely as common property. They share everything. This is a testimony of somebody who says these guys are lunatics. But we see from them that they believe in a crucified one. They are not afraid of death. They believe they're immortal, and that's not logical. He's making fun of this craziness that's happening. Tacitus calls it Roman Empire مليانة بلاوي. It's just full of problems. وعندنا بلوى كبيرة قوي. The biggest بلوى or the biggest problem, something superstitious happened in this area called Judea. Since we got this Judea, we have headaches non-stop. وطلعوا لنا في الآخر بلوى that this guy rose from the dead. This is mischievous superstition. He calls it in his words. I'm not going to read it because it's going to take a while. So again, the view of this movement from outside. The conclusions, I just said it, so we'll not go into the Christian behavior in the empire. I said it quickly, that they have to pay taxes and customs. I'm reading from their documents. They have a document called Romans, epistle to the group to Rome. They actually reached Rome, which is very annoying to the Romans. And they have to pay taxes and customs, they not avoid the taxes, although the empire kills us. The wives, don't divorce your husbands and vice versa, if they are willing to stay with you when you join the movement. The system for slaves, don't revolt against your master. Obey him, even the wicked ones as well. And to the masters who converted, they tell them to be compassionate. That's not of importance for us. But I'm just telling you, the three common things in any empire is the family, finances, and which is done by the taxes, and the employment system, which is the master-slave system. This movement didn't touch these. In fact, it kept exactly the laws of the empire with it. So there's no threat to the empire at all. They didn't cause a threat like they're going to cause turbulence. The only thing they have again, these are misguided. They just don't believe in the gods of Greece. They have their own god. I know their own god حاجة تكسف يعني. Their own god is the slave that we crucified like, I don't know, 3-4 years ago. حاجة يعني. I have a stronger word, but I shouldn't say it. So the new movement respected the empire fabric. Employment, financial, family, didn't touch them. What is expected? Christ is not here, he ascended. Christians have no army to fight back. They're just people, men, women, children. The one whom they claim is their God doesn't come to save them. They're being thrown to the lions. Where is this God that they love? Where is he? Why doesn't he come and save these children? If you were me, if you were there at that time, would you join them? Would you really honestly join them? Knowing that your life is a danger. It's not a joke. They are ridiculed all the time because they have this funny way of very pure and they don't participate in the immorality that happens in the empire. And that actually makes them weirder people. It's so weird. I mean, Christians are just funny. So, the first Roman emperor was the might of the Roman Empire that covers the whole area that this movement was in, should kill them all and we're done. And he tried. Then Christianity, sayonara. Do you know what sayonara is, by the way? Okay. So I don't need to explain it, right? Fierce opposers, I already talked about this. So again, the causal diagram that feeds into the fierce opposers are the Jews. They have law, faith in God. They have a God, mighty, powerful. They have history, very long history. They protect their land and the temple. And then the second one is the Greeks' opposition, and they have also philosophy that you can't really joke with them. And the Romans, and they believe in the gods. The Romans' opposition because they have their own gods and they consider this group as atheists. And then the temples are shutting down. There's an effect financial, but the Christians didn't mean it. People are leaving the temples and joining this group. So there is the income of the temples is going down. And this is because of the exchange of letters between Pliny and Emperor Trajan. So this feeds into the Roman opposition. Although they pay the taxes, but the problem that aches them, this pure living, they don't assimilate to what the gods of the Greeks want. And they challenge that they openly will not worship our gods, and this causes the temples to close. It's not enough reason to kill them, really, but they decided to. 300 years to kill the Christians. This is odd number 5 and 6. All of the leaders, the 12 and the 70, except somebody called John, outlived this. They were executed. So the Roman Empire, 300 years killing them. This is quickly the names of the what doesn't make sense is that they do this in public. They have to torture the children and the men and the women, so the people who are watching would just never entertain the craziness of believing in an afterlife and giving up this one. That's crazy. So it doesn't make any sense. The Roman emperors are Nero, Domitian, Trajan, Marcus Aurelius, Septimus Severus, Decius, very, very, very tough, Valerian, Maximinus the Thracian, Aurelian, Diocletian, and Maximian. These 10 were ruthless with this group. They don't differentiate age, they don't differentiate dignity, nothing. 10, 312 years actually, till the Edict of Milan. One of the examples is a bishop called Ignatius. He wrote to the Romans because he was taken from his bishopric place, which is Antioch, and he was taken to Rome, and he wrote certain epistles. The people of Rome, because they respected his age, they said, let's talk to the emperor to not throw you to the lions. Like, let's find something nicer than throwing you to the lions. He wrote to them an epistle to the Romans by St. Ignatius. He said, I am afraid that your love to me will cause me harm. I want to meet Christ. Please do not stop by your love that I get thrown to the lions. Look at what he says here. He talks here about having eternal communion with Christ. Suffer me to become food for the wild beasts. The death that they do is not pleasant. It's not just beheading. Through whose instrumentality it will be granted me to attain to God. I am the wheat of God, and let me be ground by the teeth of the wild beasts, that I may be found the pure bread of Christ. During the liturgy, when the AC stops, I'm so annoyed. What does that compare to this? أبونا متضايق عشان AC بايظ. يا حلاوة. Yeah, very weak. ده واحد بيقول يعني don't stop me to be cut by the beasts. I want them to crush me, like the wheat is crushed for the communion. We use this actually to prove how early the communion is written about, away from the Bible. Side note, that they may become my tomb and may leave nothing of my body, so that when I have fallen asleep in death, I may be no trouble to anyone. That is, when we say Mary Ignatius so and so, that's the word Ignatius is that saint, the first bishop of Antioch. The language barrier, it's very understood to learn a new language. Later on, to preach this fallacy with it makes it impossible to reach outside Judea or the areas that can speak Greek. So here is the different languages. The scoffers. Okay, what are the scoffers? I'm using the Bible and this just to get their definition, is that one of the people called Peter, he is very worried, knowing this first, that scoffers will come in the last days, walking according to their own lust and saying, where is the promise of his coming? هو فين؟ يعني مش كفاية ضحكتوا علينا إنه ما لحقناهوش في الأسنشن. Where is he? When is he coming? So he says this will happen. This Peter is not surprised. So Christ has not come yet, hence all these apostles are delusional. Christ non-coming in the first century even gives more reason for not believing in whom the apostles are preaching about. So that's odd number 8. Again, the scoffers, the cause to the effect of the failure of Christianity, and what causes the scoffers to scoff is the leader that they claim has risen is not back yet. Let's summarize the odds before we continue. Odd number 1, the message of this movement is extremely far-fetched. Fairy tale. Odd number 2, the message is spread only by speech. And you don't accept anybody if he doesn't believe in this fairy tale you're talking about. Odd number 3, the number of the people that subscribe to it is extremely small. 120 using Acts 2. That supports odd 1, that you're not able to get to the threshold to get this movement going. Odd number 4, there are 3 sets of very fierce opposers: religious, intellectual, militarily, and civil. Odd number 5, all the leaders of the new movement were executed within a very short time. If you add 33 plus maybe 60, Peter in 69, as well as, or maybe 65, 64, as well as Paul, Mark in Egypt in 69, in the feast of the resurrection, dragging him from the church and tying him to a horse and dragging him in the streets of Alexandria because it was attack to the gods of Egypt. The length of the era of fierce persecution by the Roman Empire is actually very, 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 very long, with no wars against the Roman Empire, with nothing. It just, we believe we're going to offer incense to our gods, even if the people in the military will love our country, will defend our country. There's somebody called George, somebody called Mina, somebody called Mercurius, somebody called Maurice. All of these high leaders. Mercurius was very close to Diocletian. I can worship God at home. No, I'm going to worship God openly, but I love my empire. I love my country. I defended my country. I love my army, but I can't. I'm sorry, Diocletian. Okay, torture starts. So these are people not hating the empire. They love it. They will give their life for it. The conversion of areas that were speaking in different languages than Hebrew and Greek, how could it happen that soon? By end of first century, second century, we have so much growth in this movement in different languages. Odd number 8, people who intended to enter, maybe he'll come soon and we take your word for on confidence or on trust. He hasn't come, so bye-bye. It takes too much sacrifice to stay in this religion. In Jerusalem, there was such a pressure financial. You read about it in Hebrews 10, that all of their belonging, as soon as you join Christianity, is confiscated. Of course, you cannot become a Christian under the nose of the Pharisees in Jerusalem. That's such audacity. يعني ليها كلمة بالعربي كده يعني خلي عندك something. Do it somewhere else, not here. So this is the first one is covered, the 8 odds. The historical reference to the new movement, here is tons of history that is outside the Bible. Of course, this is, as I said, it's a part of a longer presentation, so I'll just let you know that this is very, very available, and it's non-Christian sources. This is a sample of 11 beliefs that were in parallel with this movement. Where are they? Where did they go? Do you know anybody who's a Sardonian? Or Basilidian? Or Docetists? There is, again, in the class we go into each one of them, but we will not do today. Just to let you know that there's other things besides Theudas and Judas that Josephus talked about, movements that happen next to it. Christians never fought them, never persecuted them. They told them, until you take your path, we'll take our path. And the result is, these are not here. I just want to let you know in a very quick note, for any of these movements to gain traction with the people, they have to write in their book about the crucifixion and the resurrection. Again, these movements, they write in their books, and they name the books names after the disciples of this man Jesus, to make it grow, to get sales. Why do they put the crucifixion and the resurrection in it? It means that it was very mainstream. That means your book will not sell. You will not get people to follow you unless you put the crucifixion and the resurrection. That's an indirect proof to something we'll show at the end. So these, are you guys understanding what I'm saying? Is that to get this movement to succeed, you have to mention this fairy tale in it, which means that the people believe in this fairy tale like dogma. That's an outside view on it. The proof is that the other ones that died on their own because they made books like Gospel of Judas, Docetus have Gospel of Peter. I can go into detail in each one of them, but time will not never permit it. But just one point. They always follow a single leader, not Jesus. A single leader, follower of Jesus. And they get baptized sometimes in his name. So this is all to show that the parallel movements, to make their books sell, they have to call them names of one of the disciples, and they have to put in it an account of the crucifixion and the resurrection. Otherwise, people will not open it. That's an indirect proof to the validity of how this started to get traction in Christianity. So, I'll skip them for the sake of time. Number 3, besides I support this very strongly, the followers of the movement, I should change the word Christianity here, never had a war, or persecuted, or killed, or plotted using power of the state against any of these movements. Christianity only declared them not following the tradition that the Lord left for us. So you go your way, we go our way. And we see who emerges on the exit. So, I'm now done. We're going to just summarize the points and spend just only 5 minutes. I sincerely apologize for how big the font is in this slide. If your ophthalmologist has a problem, just tell them I went to a presentation and I am willing to compensate your visiting the doctor, because it is me who caused this to you. So as we said, the causal diagram, I'm going to read it out, but I just want to what we have done to plot it for you step by step. Failure of Christianity is the effect. It's caused by the story of Christianity, this very tiny red thing here, I don't even see it, doesn't make sense. What feeds into it doesn't make sense. Jesus resurrected and ascended, so we can see him. You cannot reproduce him. Tacitus called them having a superstition. I'm talking about this feeds into the resurrection here. Lucianus told them misguided Christians. So for those who joined late, I built this based on causal diagrams. The effect is the failure of Christianity. What causes it is 8 causes. Here is the first one. And these feed into it to support that it doesn't make any sense. Crucifixion is not a dignified death, it's disgraceful. And you say that your God was crucified. Philosophy, gods do not die. By the way, this is all have been in the previous slides. It's just here I'm putting it all together to build the whole tree. Dead people do not rise. If risen, where is he? Second odd, the message is spread without any coercion or intimidation, just peace, and whatever happens to you happens. Odd number 3, it's a small number and can be easily killed. There's no increase in the number of the people, so you will never have increase in number. Why you're not having increase in number? You don't have any revolution against the empire. You're actually gullible when people take your belongings. I didn't read this from Lucianus, but there is documentation and a reference that if people take things of the Christians, they don't sue them or come after them. He was proposing this. Family union, they don't break the families. They pay taxes to the empire. The slaves are not supposed to revolt against the masters, even the harsh ones. They obey the law and they respect the ruler, even if the ruler kills them or persecutes them. So how will people join them? You need a revolution to just get people to like topple the empire, especially the slaves. They didn't. Small number is also affected by the Romans can crucify thousands very quickly. The number of people never exceeded the threshold. We have seen that Theudas and Judas, each one of them had 400 people, and they died, and their corpses are in the desert. So the Christianity is the same thing. You will never gather any number. So now the fourth odd is the fierce oppressors, and they are 3, the Jews, the Greeks, and the Romans. The Romans, the temples are closing, and people, they have their own gods, so the Christians are atheists. Pliny the Younger saw that the temples are closing in Bithynia. That's why that's a persecution was one of the reasons for it, is that we have to kill them. They're taking away the temple image. And that also fed into that we shouldn't have any God, because we're losing wars because of these Christians that don't believe in our gods. They're atheists. The Greeks have their philosophy. The Jews have to protect the land and the temple. They have their history. They have the law. So they have very, very strong faith in God. Fifth odd, Romans persecution for 300 years. Sixth odd, all Christian leaders are executed within a very short time. Like the head of your mission is dead, Peter, Paul, John at the end of the first century. Preaching in foreign language is very unlikely. As we said, to need a mastery for the language, it's very unlikely to preach it with that much capability of philosophy to convince anybody with a fairy tale. The scoffers, Jesus has not come back, so see you later. It was nice meeting you. Bye-bye. These 8 odds are fighting the movement. Obviously, the movement succeeded. This is a church, by the way. Just in case. And there is 2 priests that are deluded by this movement, as well as all of you. Why did it succeed? Yes.
Do you mind if I ask a question?
No, not at all. And actually, I want the challenge, because I want to plug any holes in my argument. And the more I hear challenges, the better it becomes time. And I use this quite a bit on Zoom debates and stuff with people that find it very, very compelling. They feel that the argument is strong, especially it's very early in the faith. It's not crusades or power of Christianity, or when the faith had the freedom of religion like in the States now. So I love questions.
So to answer your question, I believe it's truth. And that was the underlying manifestation of what has brought us here. But my main question, which I want to challenge the truth, is so Judaism superseded Christianity, and it's still also here today, and it went through that same environment of persecution and continued persecution like Christianity. And I know...
but they don't have a superstition.
So... Yes, and I wanted to ask, so a lot of Christianity funneled from that judicial population, and it also was, I wanted to ask, so the superstition, there was a lot of polytheism at the time as well, and so people were also primed to believe in gods, and like you said, that the gods don't die, with the idea that Jesus resurrected and ascended, that kind of continues that idea. So I feel like some people, especially with that being gullible and being misled, if they already believe in polytheism, which is something they can't even see, I feel like people would have the capability of believing in something like Jesus. And with that idea, how do we know that it's truth and not the hopeful message of eternal life? Because I feel like that idea where there was hope of, in Judaism, it was a hope of a savior, and then Christianity was this eternal life idea. And do other religions have that idea that keep people going and keep people looking for eternity? Or is it really truth that's keeping everyone motivated?
You're going on the circumference, and we need to get to the center. What is the truth in this whole thing? The truth is this. This is an event that didn't happen in any other movement, which is a person raises himself from the dead and manifests himself so clearly that the people who follow him, against all of these odds, they're willing to die, even if it's a horrible death, even if they don't make anything out of this life. This is the validity, the truth is this word, the resurrection. All of the other movements could be morality, could be believing in gods that don't die. This all were accused by the Christians till they found that they find life or eternal life for them is not a maybe. There is no, it has been documented that there is no mother would let her children die in front of her if she's not sure 100% of this fact. So the 8 odds will not be able to squash this movement if the resurrection is true, which is not found in any religion. So the proof of the fact by the observation of the behavior. I didn't start with the resurrection. I said, all of these odds will be overcome if he's risen. Otherwise, we'll never be able to. I want you to create for me a scenario where this would emerge under these circumstances if the resurrection was false. Nobody will have contempt for it. Luciano said this, not the Bible. He said they have contempt for life. Like, this is misguided. They're immortal. Who thinks he's immortal? Even in philosophies. But they never said that the God died. You have to compile all of the 8 together. Nobody says that their God came, was crucified, يعني مش die كده dignified for mansion or something, was crucified publicly. There's tons of histories from the Romans that this man was crucified. حتى in Lucianus, he said they're crucified sage. But the result of it, بدل من الناس بتجري, they actually run into him. This will happen only if he's risen and he was seen risen. So, if most of the books in the market, they start by the resurrection and they defend it. I find this to the public not a very good approach, even if they defend it very well. I cannot start with something mentioned in the Bible. I have to lead you, hopefully tonight, to say, for this movement, this fairy tale to succeed against all of these odds, it would only happen if the resurrection is true. Does that make sense? That's the truth. That's actually the truth, which is not found anywhere. Any other movement or religion, it's either goes by force, or it's either a philosophy, or it's either believing in gods that were immortal based on some conjecture, because there's gods of the Egyptians, there's gods of the Greeks, there's gods of the Indians. So we all say there's all religions. No. These are movements, conjecture about God. In Christianity, to succeed against all of these odds simultaneously would not happen unless the people who preach him risen have seen him. He had two outcomes. Either the apostles are liars, they didn't see him risen, they claim he's risen. Or they saw him, mafish something in the middle. So if they are liars, who gives himself life to death based on a lie he created? Some people give their life to death based on a lie of somebody the leader did, like other religions. I'm not bashing them. I'm just saying they follow the leader very, very correctly. There is religions that follow and they can die for sabilillah and for God's sake. I guess I give a big hint here. It's being recorded, so ask about me next week if I'm going to survive or not. I appreciate the text. But for them, there is 70 and 12 said we saw him. None of them is claim I'm the leader. There's no single leader you have to follow. Second thing, this is not mass hysteria, because they all died poor. They all died not gaining anything. They all died happily, like finally, just behead me, I want to go there. So if somebody invented a lie, he wouldn't die for it. Another follower may die for it because you lied. So why do people invent religion? Power, money, land, pleasure. There's power in religion. But from reading Lucianus, can anybody claim, not even from the Bible, can anybody claim that the disciples have a shady behavior? Lucianus would have grabbed it right away. The shady behavior is that they are immortal and they have contempt for death and they don't have any care for worldly belongings. That
still exists after all these, like despite all these odds.
No, I'm not saying true in the sense that the others are bad. I'm saying that it's supported, very well supported, because it has no chance of success. While if you give any scenario for others, like Buddhism or Hinduism, it has no dogma. So you can collect people basing or like feel happy about your pains and so on. I'm not saying this in all respect. Others, the power that they gain from creating a religion. Things that happens in the United States, freedom of religion, Christianity never even smelled this, till today, in fact. But now it's much better, of course, than the original time of Christ. So,
no, I was gonna ask, can you say, like, for a religion like Islam, one of the main odds is that there are miracles, that a book was divinely revealed to an illiterate man, and the religion still exists right now. There's mosques, there's leaders. So
it grew by force. You understand Arabic? Just go to YouTube and search on Islam بحد السيف. Search for it and see what the clerics say. It's a very, very justified dogma and defend it. That's why I listed in the odds. It's a peaceful invitation. Now you have to take all of the odds together. And that's why it was years to build this. This is not found in any books or any, this is basically past work of apologetics, or how to give a logical reason without starting with an axiom from the Bible. This is what happens in the books in the market. They start with the resurrection, they defend it. Good, with historical and so on, but once you mention the word resurrection, if I were not Christian, I would leave the book. Because the word itself is from your book. How are you going to defend it? It's from your book. So what I did today is completely from the outside looking at a system. Actually, there is something in controls called observability of the system. You have a system you want to control, you don't know what the transfer function is, what is the math of it. So you feed it certain input and you plot the output, and you can actually represent the system with an equation that you can control the system. So that's what we're doing with Christianity. It's a closed system. I don't know what's inside. But what I see from outside tells me a certain conclusion that this system wouldn't work unless the one they're talking about actually rose from the dead. It wouldn't work. So you see what we've done tonight? Do you have any other question? You're still Bella. Oh, you're a fan? Okay. So the word you said, truth, is this word. He's risen. But we concluded at the end, not started with it. That was the whole idea, is not to start with it. I wanted you to conclude that this is the only way it would work. Yeah, there is someone in the back, yes.
Oh, okay. So one of the evidences that was
I'm looking somewhere and the voice is coming. That's magic. That's the power of the resurrection here.
So
yes,
you talked a lot about early church history. I'm just wondering, the Jews obviously have their history with God. How come when after the resurrection and St. Paul starts preaching, how come they don't accept Christ?
Pray for them. St. Paul said it in Romans 9. I say with a full conscience, I wish I myself was accursed for the sake of my countrymen. If God had a choice between me and the Jews, I wish He chose them. And He lists 9 qualities that will make God always visit the Jews. They have the oracles, they have the fathers, they have the laws, and from them comes Christ. So you're exactly right. We have to work with this. We're not an elite religion. Apologetics, I always say this to the students, apologetics is washing the feet, not changing the head. Washing the feet. I am here to serve you. I am here if you want to crush me. I just want to wash your feet. It might get to your head if you're convinced, but I'm not here to be an elite or more knowledgeable. And that's why I welcome these debates that I have with people on Zoom, because the spirit that they feel, especially with evolution and cosmology, is basically knowledge. It's not a sermon, and it's a care. They might be convinced, they might not, but I hear a lot of feedback that makes me enhance my ideas more and more over the years. So you're absolutely right. The Jews have a very low-hanging fruit, and we have to pray for them, because what St. Paul said in Romans 9, they have all of these qualities of seeing God, and it just, they're delta, Messiah minus delta, like they just need to cross this delta. There was a voice coming from, yes, Andrew. No, Anthony.
yeah. So one of the evidences.
Bondo? Is it Bondo?
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the evidence that you like the Shroud of Turin, but there's like a lot of debates about like its age. Like people say it's from the 1300s, and then some people say it's from the time of Christ. So how do we know which one's true?
I wrote a book on the Shroud of Turin. Here it is. It's on Amazon. There is 8 articles in this book. Read my final project. It's exactly on the carbon dating. And you can get that book actually right now on Amazon. So I can't summarize it in 5 minutes. But yeah, I'm trying to leave a library of work on this. There's also a book, but don't get it now, which is I told you that I can prove the existence of God by a very simple, logical way. I'm going to tell it to you. People say you cannot prove God's existence. By logic, if you have an experiment that has two outcomes, A and the opposite of A, just it cannot have head or tails. Can I prove that his non-existence is impossible and that's the way to prove his existence? If you have two outcomes and says you cannot prove God's existence, well, we studied logic up to our eyeballs in engineering. There is an event and the non-happening of the event. If I cannot prove the event, but I can prove that the event not happening is impossible. Impossible in the sense life cannot start and the Big Bang cannot happen. Scientifically, not religiously. Then if life cannot start on its own and the Big Bang cannot happen on its own, there is an initiator for both of them, then the non-existence of the initiator is impossible. Then the initiator exists. You guys following what I'm doing here? So proving the axiom by proving the opposite of it is impossible, not improbable. I prove it to the, like for the evolution and the origin of life, there's another book, but it's going to be updated before you buy it. It's evolution, DNA, and the origin of life. So I'm showing here that what life is, and it cannot start on its own scientifically. This is very, very. And I have debates on this, and the people, when they answer back, keep enhancing it to the point it became, I think, satisfactory. But I have to put the new version online. What other question? Yes, Theo.
So we know the movement succeeded, and we know that the resurrection happened, and that's why. But also, is it really successful if it's split up so many times? If it's, we're Orthodox, and there's Catholics, there's Protestants, there's a lot of different sects in the religion, and how does that fit into this?
Because it divided, you mean? So I didn't cover the divisions, obviously, because this is not talk for tonight. But that could be another thing, which is, you're going to laugh at this, but that's a third book I have on Amazon. It's called The Kiss for the Eucharist. I'm actually showing how logical Orthodoxy is. I really apologize, I didn't mean this, but this is a very, very logical book with church fathers and passages from the liturgy that show that Christianity is how it has to end in communion. So we are not very, very different from the churches that share the communion. But we're different from the Protestants that don't believe in the communion. So actually this work emerged from, because in the apologetics, does God exist in which religion? If it's Christianity, which Christianity? So this level 3 for me was the number one priority. How to wash the feet of the Protestants. They love Christ very, very much. They adore him. I love to learn from them how they love Christ. And they don't enjoy that they have communion. So we have to work with them to convince them. Sola Scriptura, I do it with a small pamphlet, but this is fully for us, for you guys, of how to understand the creation and the fall and the salvation. Very, very logical. It has a lot of diagrams and church fathers and passages from the liturgy to support it. I would love to get into this, but that's a completely different topic. I have YouTube videos on it if anybody's interested. The first 2 chapters of Genesis, because we don't understand them well, we don't understand salvation well. So the logic of Christianity, why it has to end in communion, because the creation was a perfect system aiming to get to heaven. The system got damaged. The damage in the system, I call it the problem. And then the Old Testament is a signs of how the problem will be solved, but we don't know yet. And then the New Testament is the idea of how the designer of the creation is the same one who can bring it back to the same way. So when you have a system that was working before it got damaged, you can fix it because you have a reference what you want to bring it to. We can compare it. So the salvation without the creation is vacuum. So I showed there is actually communion for Adam and Eve. This is mind-boggling idea, but it's here in the book. So also showing that the New Testament salvation will not happen to me unless I reach the point that I'm never separate from God, because the fall is separation. Opposite to the word separation is the word union. Union happens by his term, abide in me and I in him. So it's very simple line. If the fall is separation, salvation has to end in union with the true God, not with the symbol of God. That's the whole premise where the idea started from, and then Rabbina Ba'a sent amazing things that connected more and more stuff. So again, there's a lot of work to update them, but don't get any of them. The shroud one is ready, but the other ones, there's some very, very nice stuff I need to add. So the divisions is basically communion or no communion. And our role is to run after the ones who don't believe in the communion. That is really our target as Orthodox, not to say we're better. We say we're going to serve you because you deserve to actually unite with Christ. And it worked with several people that, thank God, got baptized into Orthodoxy. Because it's, with them I don't do church fathers or liturgy, I do sola scriptura with them. But with the Bible only, they get attracted to this, and from the Bible only I show them that communion cannot be a symbol of Christ, it has to be him. And okay, makes sense. Yes.
So I think I agree with you on the idea that you can prove that something like a creator has to exist to make everything, because this thing to emerge on its own is impossible. But
scientifically, I'm not saying it as an axiom. I have a full taking into the system and looking into it and say that why it's impossible, not improbable.
So one argument that I actually heard from a couple of people, or like over the internet as well, is you're arguing the impossibility of it based on the complexity of the system. God himself is also complex, so why couldn't God have been created himself?
Why God could not have created himself?
Well, no, my point is, like, God himself is also complex. Why is he the thing or the being that existed from the very beginning and didn't need a creator?
So you're proving it, or you're arguing for it?
No, my point.
Forgive me. This is stupidity on my part. I'm just not able to follow. Don't give up. Don't give up. Maybe because I'm simple, not complex.
The main, like, the argument for the need of a creator is the complexity of the system where, like, us, the world, and the universe. They're very complex. God himself is also complex. So why didn't he need to be created?
Well, I don't have an agreement with the very premise of the origin of life that it's complex, for this following reason. The way, and I think we had this in a private conversation, the way that you show that life cannot start on itself is a very simple premise. It's not a complicated premise. If anybody who does DNA here, we can do it in 5-10 minutes. But so I don't go into the, people who do intelligent design go into the complexity of the system to show God as a designer. I actually don't use that approach, although by profession I'm an engineer, I can relate to this very much, but I get to the very, very basic point of what is life and what is the origin of the universe. And both these, you can see it cannot start on a very simple premise, very tangible. It's not complicated. So the complexity in the design comes later, but the premise of the origin of life is simple, which is DNA does not have biochemical forces in the sequence. That's the premise. If there is no forces that can form the DNA, then you have to ask, where does that sequence come from? Like, for you who are not following, the strands of the DNA have biochemical affinity to one another, A to T and C to G. But if you have an AT strand, you cannot tell what's the next one. There's no affinity. There's nothing that can tell you what's coming next. Are you guys following what I'm saying? Any strand. Because they cannot tell what's next, then there's no forces that can tell you what's next. Then there's no natural forces that can form that sequence. Then you have to ask the same question, where does the sequence come from? Because there is no natural forces that can tell you if you're at AT, for sure the next one is so and so. The absence of natural forces, which is biochemical affinity, in the direction of the sequence mandates the question, where does the sequence come from? Addition to this, if there were natural forces and you have a strand that's AT, the next one has to be TA, the next one has to be AT, the next one has to be AT, because the forces will bring an a T after they, but there is none. That's why the DNA can freely carry information. That is the premise. Till they get the answer clearly, where does the sequence come from? It still stands. They have to do the labor work to say how can, and DNA is life, by the way. Origin of life, this is what I spent quite a bit of time, is the origin of the DNA. Can DNA be formed by natural forces? That's the question. Maybe you didn't follow, but this is the basic, simple idea that life, which is DNA, cannot come into existence by itself, by natural forces, which is biochemistry. We can have another talk about this, but it's amazing. Big Bang is another thing. But I love your idea that God is complex. Yeah, he's the complex in the design, but he made it so equal, like E equal mc squared, when we started finding that the space is different than here on Earth. So I'll stop here so that we don't keep you any longer. I'm available if anybody wants to have any discussion. Thank you so much for this. Some announcements.
Let's say the concluding hymn, and then we'll have the announcement. Eminende loya doxe betrike, eoke agium ne of matiken in kai.